Okay.
Yours?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been,
You told me.
I hadn't been paying attention to it, so, I mean,
That's the only.
I don't even know to understand it. But you know, Deidre understands it.
It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, June 14th. Call this meeting to order. Start with a roll call. Director Betty Doherty,
Here,
Director Donna McAleer,
here,
Director Bob Lux here, Director Dale Walker.
Yeah.
Director Mike Wise is currently not here, but we have a quorum that we can proceed. Begin with a invocation and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen.
Amen.
If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or additional reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. Oops, where'd the flags go? Flags are over there today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge allegiance to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Okay. Shelley, do we have any requests for public speakers today? There's no. There it is. Comments from the public. Consider an act on requests for adjustment to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district. Mr. Mooney? None today. Thank you very much, Jeannie. I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda, and if there are changes, we're going to have questions. Should you have questions regarding any aspect of that, we can we'll do it after there's a motion. Is there a motion to?
I have a motion to amend the consent agenda. I had asked for a review of the infrastructure. I don't see it in the notes.
Okay.
Oh, no, I meant if on this upcoming agenda or approving the note minutes of the last meeting.
This is for approval of the last month.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, okay, no worries. Do we
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written.
second? Okay, Director Walker, seconds. Discussion? I guess I'll do this during the I don't know. Jim, on agenda item, or excuse me, on standard item number 3, Mr. Easton made a about a drainage ditch. Was action taken? Will that be in the GM report?
I know Mike had reached out to.
We don't have a phone number for him. That's good.
Oh,
Hey, Shelley, that wasn't a good phone number that I gave you?
It's the same number that's in his account. And it's not his number. It goes to somebody from Seymour Industries. I'm not sure who that is. And I left a message there. This is
I text him all the time, so I'll double check all that. I mean, he's a friend of mine.
That's Rick.
Mhm, That's Rick.
Okay. Didn't recognize Mr. Easton.
Mhm.
And that. I think I know the answer to this. I'm gonna ask it anyway, Maureen. On page 10 with the debt service, what's due on September 1st? Is there any concern whatsoever for that payment?
I can look up and see what's due.
For this, it'll be a million, almost $1.8 million.
Yeah.
Are you asking, do we have the money? Okay.
I'm saying,
We have 2.3 million in the banks.
okay,
We are.
good, good.
Yeah.
Jeannie, thank you for the collections, the tax rolls. You're getting close, 99.00.
Thank you.
Pretty good. Um, Chris, would you please explain to the rest of the board the reason for that PRV on Grogan's Mill?
Sure. The next, right under the, item number 10.
It's, is it? Is it?
Cover that with the assets.
Okay, good. Any further questions regarding the approval of the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Okay. Receive the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report, including update on wastewater strategic plan, update on infrastructure funding.
Good afternoon. I have a couple items to run through before I pass it off to Ed to talk about the infrastructure funding. First is to answer the question on what the PRV is on Grogan's Mill. A PRV is a pressure regulating valve in this case. It's also known as a pressure reducing valve. But in the case that we're going to use it, it goes in the ground as a pressure regulating valve. And so the Woodlands, as you see it over here on the map on the right, it's broken up on our side into 5 service areas, also 3 pressure planes. And so water from one pressure plane without these PRVs would flow from one area to the next freely, right? So the 29 to 78 area of the Woodlands is higher elevation than the area that we're in. So without these PRVs separating the areas, the water would just flow straight down to here. So to break up those areas, we put in these PRVs. So in the last 5 years or so, a line was installed from basically St. Luke's down to where we are on Grogan's Mill roughly. That connected the water plant 5 at St. Luke's to the water plant down here at around in Mud 36 called Slash Pond. So what we're finding is the water from water plant 5 at St. Luke's just continuously goes down that line into this area. So it's the same thing going from 2978 over to here. We're just going from north to south. So this PRV that's going to go in on Grogan's Mill, it's actually around Grogan's and Research Forest, is going to be keeping the water in the St. Luke's area rather than letting it flow all the way down to this area. That's the attempt.
Thank you, Chris. Okay.
The next item I have, you'll have a presentation in front of you. It is a high-level presentation, but it mirrors with a lengthier report. So this is the state of assets in the Woodlands. And I want to say this is the high level. We're going to go over some of this minor detail, but everyone should have this binder, the new director orientation we handed out for existing directors. This was handed out in March.
They ran, I didn't get one.
Memorized, right?
Yeah. So this is the Woodland Division 10-year project plan. What this shows is just that it's the larger projects that we have planned for the next 10 years. And so I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. If you have any questions over this, any projects you can go over that you know from here, I'll definitely cover those with you, but I want to hit some of the highlights of how we come up with this. And also the summary in here is of this. So if you have any questions along the way, please just stop me and I'll go through. All right. So first thing to note as we flip over, and I always forget page numbers. So the first page is the Woodlands Division Systems. This is only for the River Authority assets. Everything we go through is how the River Authority does their assets. It has nothing to do with Woodlands Water, nothing to do with the funds. But we do have about 8,000 assets in the Woodlands. Roughly 5,000 on the wastewater side, 3,000 on the water side. About 120 miles of water line, 70 miles, 90 miles of sewer mains, 30 lift stations, 3 wastewater plants. Generally the bigger lines, starting at 15 inches on the sewer, going up to 72. On the water side, starting at 12 inches, going up to 30 inches. But there's a lot of different assets. And so generally we don't include every like 2-inch valve as an asset because it's generally disposable. So we start with the like 6-inch valves and go up from there. So some entities would say they have more assets. Some would say less. We try to hit right in the middle. Another thing to note is it roughly, not exactly, but a few times I've looked at the mud systems as a whole. The muds have about 3 times as much infrastructure as us. So we have about 1,200 manholes. I think y'all have 3,600 to 5,000-ish manholes or so.
For storm sewer.
Oh, yeah, because there are more from storm sewer and sanitary sewer, there are
Yeah,
more.
when you put them together, there's more. So on the next page, you're going to see the 10-year project plan. Far right, you're going to see some of the main things that we look for, which is to meet the level of service expectations. That is a big going trend. You'll see more about that here in just a minute, but the level of service is not per mud. Since our system joins and goes over all muds, it's what the collective muds want for the level of service. So if collectively the muds say, we want you to let all the lines break at least 10 times before you fix them, as long as it doesn't break a regulation, that's our level of service. If the muds say, we want you to fix all the tires before they go flat, that's our level of service. That's what we gear the projects towards. The second item is timely rehabilitation or replacing of the aging infrastructure. That does go to level of service a little bit, but it also goes to regulatory requirements. I can't have sanitary sewer overflows in the system or manholes to start overflowing. So if I know I have a sewer line that's starting to decay, then I need to have a timely replacement of it. I can't say I'm going to allow 10 overflows before I replace it. I need to start rehabbing it as I go. The last, of course, is compliance to state and federal regulations. If I have assets at the wastewater plant that aren't doing the purpose of a filling a permit, then I have to replace those. So in a high level, those are the items that are considered when we're doing the 10-year project in a very high level of this. So on the next page, you're going to see the level of service. This is, I think, how I started the project plan discussion in March with the muds. You can see these 3 pictures, okay? And this is essentially the easiest way I can come up with level of service is if you don't do maintenance on your system, like your car, your house, and everything else, eventually it'll fail off. So the question on level of service is, if you want a good level of service and basically what you've had before, use the example of Winter Storm Uri. 15 million Texans didn't have water, a lot more didn't have power, but the Woodlands did. And so when you're home for COVID or hurricanes, whatever else, my take of what the muds have always said level of service is, y'all don't want to have to worry if you're going to have water. You don't want to have to worry if you have sewer. Just make sure it's there, most economical and feasible way. Don't gold plate everything. But, if you have a generator that's 50 years old, replace it. That way you can be assured that if you have a hurricane come through, you can still produce water for somebody sheltering in place. And so that's what these 3 circles are meant to represent. Either you can pay next to nothing and not be guaranteed, there's no guarantee with water, we can throw that out there before I say it. But, if you don't pay for maintenance, then you can't, be ensured that you're going to have water. You can pay a little bit for maintenance, but then your water may not be what you want it to be. So the far right round picture is generally where we try to hit with the muds of asphalt. Is keep the infrastructure up to date. Don't let it fail before you replace it. Replace it basically when it starts to expire. So if something has a service life of 50 years, start planning to replace it at 45, replace it, give or take, within 10% of its life. Next page, asset management. This is a very, very high level of the very detailed asset management that we do. Every one of those 8,000 assets has this equation done to it. So the likelihood of failure is, it's a little table. If y'all want the plan, I can get you the plan. But we go through and we rate it on capacity, level of service, mortality, and then something else I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's, I think it's, did I ever say mortality? It's not, okay. So there's 4 items that we rate them. We go through and say, okay, is the capacity what we need? Does it meet all regulations? Is it gonna fail anytime soon? So we rate all those, pick the highest one. That's the likelihood that that asset's gonna fail at whatever time. That's on a score of 1 to 5. Then we, yes, sir.
You use statistics on the previous examples when it's failed, like you have history.
We do. We go back and we look, is it the brand? Is it the application?
What is it called? Mean between time failure.
Mean time between failure. We also, so every time, and I'll say this throughout various things we talk, every asset's looked at every single year, with the exception of stuff that's underground, right? So you can't look at all your water and sewer lines 24/7. But if we have a water line break, then if it's on the AC pipe, we look inside the pipe. We rub our hands, see is there any crevices or cracks or any dents or stuff like that. So we'll do evaluation on anything that we can at any point in time. Every time we look at likelihood of failure, we also look at mitigation factor. Do we have anything on site that we can mitigate the likelihood of that asset failing? And in a lot of cases, I cannot figure out if something's going to fail, it's going to fail, right? In some cases, you can put a coating on concrete. That would reduce the likelihood of that asset failing. So if I do have a mitigation factor, it actually reduces the likelihood of failure. So if that can be up to I think it says 1 to 3. So if my likelihood is a 2 and my mitigation factor is a 1, that's now a 1, right? 2 minus 1 equals 1. Then we multiply that by the consequence of failure. The consequence of failure is a triple bottom line. So we look at the social, economical, and environmental aspects. We rate each of those categories, and at the end of the day, we pick the highest rating. So if one, it's a 4 and everything else is a 1, we use the 4 because that's obviously the highest one that has the most impact to the community. So same thing we look at is mitigation factor. Do we have spare parts? Do we have contracts? Do we have redundant equipment? There's a lot more on consequence that we can look at. Same equation. So we take the likelihood of failure minus mitigation multiplied by consequence minus mitigation. End of the day, we end up with this business risk exposure, or BRE. 1 to 25, 25 being the worst. Once we get those scores, then we look on the right and we say, okay, if this asset is above a 20, it means we need some pretty much immediate action. If it's 10 to 20, 5 to 10, or 2 to 5, there's a cost factor there. There's a level of service to it. Then if it's up to 10, we basically just keep reviewing them. Every single year, we're looking at every single asset. Because just because it's good this year doesn't mean nothing's going to change and it's still going to be good next year. So every year we go through this process with all the assets. On the next page, just to kind of show some of the things we look at with likelihood of failure and asset or consequence of failure. Some of this on the likelihood is a paper survey. That being said, we do go out and look at every single asset every single year. There's a group of us that go around and put eyes on every single thing. Engineers, electrical people, safety people, operators, maintenance, get everybody's perspective. So just some things that we look at there. And of course, mitigation strategies I talked about a minute ago. All right, so now we're on to asset service. This is, in general terms, how we determine the service life of all assets. So we've gone through various publications, AWWA, EPA, a lot of different asset management. We've talked to consultants as well that have been in the business and said, what is the average service life for these assets? And from that, this is what we came up with. And so one of them we're talking about quite a bit now is the strategic plan, wastewater strategic plan. Biggest issue there is at the top left, concrete structures, expected life 75 years. Now, here's the thing though. You're probably saying, well, the plant was built in 1974, 1975. We haven't reached 75 years. What's going on? Why are you looking at, 25 years too soon? So if you flip to the next page, we've added these service life modifiers because concrete is not concrete. Doesn't matter. Well, it depends where you use the concrete, what the service life is going to be, right? So concrete on a road may last 75 years, but concrete in a wastewater plant where you have hydrogen sulfide that's eating away at the concrete to get salt, it's not going to last 75 years. Then it depends, is the concrete coated? Yes,
Unless it was Roman concrete and it lasts 1,000 years.
right.
Because it was made of different components.
Well, and that's the thing.
It wasn't Portland cement and then things, so.
The stuff today is not made to last. I think everybody knows that from cars you buy and everything else. Even in the 70s, some of this concrete's good, but there's something in this wastewater that's coming through that's not holding up. So we've coated all new concrete that we're putting in, we coated. But the old concrete that's been there, wastewater plant two, we're doing a project on the headworks. You can go up to the concrete and you can scrape it with a fork and you'll get about half an inch of concrete to fall off. So that's a problem. So we're going through and we're saying, okay, here's the modifiers. So, and I just use the concrete structure just to show you. If it's non-potable water, it's just water out of a lake or creek, there's usually nothing wrong with it. It's just straight water, so it has full service life of 75 years. But if you start getting into effluent or reuse or raw sewage and stuff like that, or even the concrete or the soil that's in, it changes at 75 years. And so a lot of the, excuse me, a lot of the concrete at the wastewater plants has about a 50-year service life when you put the modifier on it and see the actual degradation that's occurring. So anytime you're looking at any of the service lives, you also got to look at the modifier. All right. Now, this is going to get detailed. I'm not going to go through everything here. It's going to lead up to the summary, but we keep stuff like this. Excuse me. This is showing the water main age profile. The bottom side, you'll see asbestos cement, the AC pipe, right? So what that's showing is right around 1983, 1988-ish, somewhere 1984 to 1988 is when AC stopped being put in. And then you switched over to PVC and steel and other stuff like that. Well, the AC pipe has about a 50-year lifespan. You may be able to get 60, you may be able to get 75, depending on the source, side conditions and everything else. So in the project plan, you're going to see there's give or take about $150 million in pipelines to replace the AC lines over 10 years. And that's based off of the service life. That's also based off the level of service. It is trying to replace it before they actually fail. That way you keep water service you plan for in the whole nine. The PVC has an expected life of at least 75 years. There's only one pipeline we'll talk about here in a minute that the MUDs over time had asked for, okay, why don't you go ahead and replace that line? And since we're there, we'll go ahead and talk about it. I think that was line. I know. So on Woodlands Parkway, there's a line that runs from, the entirety of it runs from, Lake Woodlands and Woodlands Parkway to 2978. Okay. The worst part's between Branch Crossing and 2978. So that's a 12, 16-inch PVC line that should last 75 years. It's been in the ground since about 2000, 2002, and we have about 3 to 4 breaks on average per year. Last break that we had, knock on wood, was about a year and a half ago, maybe, or so. Yeah. And there's give or take about 100-something people out of water in that area. After we put in valves and Woodlands Water was able to bypass and make some other connections. So we started having a lot of breaks on there. Average break is $25,000, $30,000, where it was before inflation. So we had just kept repairing it. And then, of course, we had told the MUDs because people were out of water. And then so some of the MUDs had said, you need to start to plan to replace that. So we put that in the project plan starting in next year. It'd be in 24 and 25, FY 24 and 25. The cost of that line alone, since it is so long and big, it's about $16 million. But that is one, it is not a service line because it's supposed to last 75 years. We've got about 20 out of it.
Was that because of subsidence?
Is it lack of sand?
Lack of sand, the bedding.
Is
So
that-
it was shifting,
There was shifting. So it could have been some related to subsidence.
or just the soil that
The ground movement.
the foundation.
So was that the only stretch of the pipe that didn't have the sand? All the other PVC areas were fine?
We only dig them up if they break. So on the ones that we broke up, one, we didn't see a lot of sand. Now granted, when you have a water main break, everything goes everywhere. So we always dig back because we have to find solid pipe and we go connection to connection.
So you put another bigger diameter around the break and then around the other break?
It's a coupling that goes on. It's a bigger diameter. Yeah.
And you use the blue glue, right?
No,
No.
we don't use that.
You're not using like the irrigation in the front yard.
No, these are all bolts and mega lugs and fittings and stuff.
To handle the pressure.
Right.
Yeah, the handle.
75 to 85, sometimes 110 or so.
So you're going to go over how you're going to replace it with new PVC, or what are you going to do to prevent this from happening for
So-
$16 million?
Right. So right now we're looking at HDPE. It's basically a fusible plastic, I guess you could say. That exists quite. It's high density polyethylene. It's
Stronger.
It's stronger, a
A little
lot
bit
more
of flexible.
flexible. Right.
Yeah, a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, I mean, PVC, it does have some flex, but it's pretty rigid. The other thing with PVC, you can get it fusible, but there's only one person who can fuse a PVC in Texas. And so therefore you're down to a sole source. With HDPE, multiple people can fuse it. And that's basically just welding the pipe together. So we're looking at HDPE because the other good news is there's very few fittings, very few connections because it's fused. And so we can pull it long distances and I don't have to have every 20-foot of joint or every 50-foot of fitting. It's just one seamless piece.
Is there a geography to it? I mean, is there certain clusters where it's been failing in the past, or is it evenly distributed along the line?
We put it in GIS just to see the entire thing.
Wondering if you
And
mapped
it's
it.
the bulk of it. There has been 2 breaks between Lake Woodlands and Woodlands Parkway and Ash Lane Way. But between basically Ash Lane Way and its crossing area and 2978, that's where the bulk of it's been.
To Branch Crossing 2978, so more to the west.
More to the west for sure.
Okay.
Because we started looking at, in that area, you have the elevated storage tank number 5, and then you also have a water plant on the other side. So we were looking at pressure, saying maybe we're just pressurizing it too much.
Right.
Pressures always show to be well within the guidelines of the actual pipe. So that's water. Yes,
You're gonna do that in situ, or is this gonna be open cut?
in situ is what we're going for, the best we can.
Do you have any capacity concerns because of the wall thickness of the HDPE?
So we keep the same interior diameter, we just change the outside diameter. It's everything I just explained is the same thing that we're looking at right now on Town Center, what we call. Town Center is an active project we're under design for. It's to replace the AC line on Grogan's Mill from Woodlands Parkway all the way to, what's that? Lakefront. Yeah, Lakefront Circle. Also going up and down Lake Woodlands, maybe half a mile to the west and about a mile to the east on Lake Woodlands and a little bit on 6 Pines. HDPE, in situ, trenchless, trying to get it done without disrupting traffic or taking up concrete. Biggest hassle there is going underneath the waterway. Because it's deep. Yeah, we directional drill, bore under, pop out the other side with the casing, basically a larger HDPE pipe, and then fish the other one through.
So you run an auger? You're running an auger underneath there?
I don't know, is that what we?
Well, whatever
It's got to be the same size as your diameter for
the
your
directional
pipe.
drill.
Yeah. And they're going to drill it dry, or they're going to drill it with mud?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We'll have to do some soil testing to see what
Yeah,
we've
if you can
got.
handle it. Yeah.
So what you'll see on the next couple pages is this is still a work in progress with the strategic plan, and we do have July 1st, I think it is when the strategic plan, we're looking at basically a new director's strategic plan review. So you get, 2-3 hours of nothing but what are we looking at on the wastewater side. But one of the things the consultant did was look at the remaining useful life for the wastewater plant assets. And so you have 2 tables here, one for wastewater plant 1, one for wastewater plant 2. It goes through the mechanical, the electrical, all the different assets, yada, 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 and gives you an estimated remaining useful life on these assets. Now, I'll tell you that this is still up for question with the consultant. because there are some items on here that they've put have a longer useful life using the 75 years without the modifier, I believe. So we're still debating, mainly because I'm showing them, well, not just me. We're showing them like on the lift stations where all the raw sewage comes in, you have a lot of hydrogen sulfide. That concrete may look good, but as soon as you start poking it, it starts getting brittle. So we want to make sure that this information is factual for y'all whenever you start saying, okay, this is the path we want you to go down. But all in all, the wastewater plants and the water system are all award winning. They continue to win awards every single year, maintain very well. Every time TCQ or anybody comes by, they say they're impressed. TCQ actually brings their rookie inspectors out, to run through our system and the mud system to go through and, basically see how it's supposed to be done. So. All right, so a couple more pages here. So the 10-year project plan breakout. This is a high-level summary of what you're going to find in the spiral binder. And so you can just see water lines is about 52% of the entire R&R plan, for the project plan. Now, one thing to note, well, two things. One, on the bottom right, you'll see where it says total of 276 million over a 10-year period. That is only the R&R portion. This binder in its entirety has $376 million worth of projects. Reason being, this binder, Spiral Notebook, has an R&R section, which is water and wastewater, basically cash funded at this point. It's proposed cash funding because we haven't got direction for the MUDs just yet on which funding source to use. You also have what we call peak flow projects. Basically, when it rains, the rainwater gets into the sewer system, goes through the plant. Some of that rainwater comes from the mud system. Some of it comes from the river authority system. But when it goes into the plants, the lift stations aren't big enough to carry it. The pumps aren't big enough to carry it. So we have to improve and expand those assets. The mud's been working for about 3 years now, 2-3 years now. Two. On reducing that I&I. So I've separated those projects out. It's about $60 to $80 million in projects that I've pulled out because the hope is that the MUDs can reduce the I&I enough and we don't need those projects. So it's kind of like the carrot is, if we can reduce it, I can get rid of these projects altogether. Then you'll have in the project plan, you'll have future facilities projects. Future facilities are basically capacity projects from 2017. So it's where basically we looked at the growth projections and said, we need a ground storage tank, we need a new line, whatever it is we need to support the growth that was occurring at the time through 2027. You'll see one project remaining in there for an aeration basin project, about $2 million. Then you'll see some bond projects in there from some bonds that were sold in 2017 to cover 3 big long-term projects. So just, I don't want you to get misled if you're looking at here and saying, well, you're saying it's 276 million, but I want to add this up, it's 376 million. There is a difference because this was talking basically about cash. All right, then the last page, FY23 projects. Even though this is a 10-year plan, this is showing and explaining what we're looking at over the next 10 years. But we only ask for funding during the budget for the FY23 projects. So these projects, you can see towards the right in the FY23 funding. FY23 projects are proposed at $8 million. And of course, you can see all the various projects that we've listed up there. Now, annually, or historically, we've budgeted between $5 and $6 million a year for rehab of the assets. You can see that's $8 million next year, but I have about $2 million cash on hand that's currently sitting in R&R that I was going to use as basically cash forward. So last year we asked for $6 million for maintenance. Next year I'm asking for $6 million, and I'm going to use $2 million that I have cash on hand to get up to the $8 million. That way I don't have to increase the rate anymore based on the maintenance needs. Now, if you look in here at the beginning of it, after the executive summary, there are some summary sheets. And just on the water side alone in FY24, it's about 22.5 million that's needed. So FY23 is fundable, but FY24 forward is not fundable. So that's something we're going to be talking about over the next few months. See going forward collectively, what's the level of service the MUDs want? Do y'all want the AC lines replaced? Do you want us to adjust the project plan and see what the path forward is on the aging infrastructure? One more last thing. When you're looking at this, because I also do not want to mislead you, this plan was updated for the water system. The wastewater system so far is very, let's say, inexpensive compared to the water system. When the strategic plan is done later this year, and the MUD say, we want you to go down this path with wastewater treatment going forward, we're going to update the plan with whatever direction y'all give us. So the wastewater next year will be redone, and I expect that number to go up quite a bit. So when you're looking at it right now, it shows 376 million. You could be looking at 500-600 million.
Chris, these engineers' estimates for the FY23 funding,
Yes.
what's the age of that estimate? Have they been updated to reflect current diesel, labor, et cetera?
Good point. So the project plan is updated every January and February. So as of basically beginning of this year, they were updated. So they're out of date already, but I mean, we put in inflation going forward of, I think it's 3% per year going forward, a 30% contingency. So it's hopeful that that'll help.
Have you led any projects recently? I mean, nothing. Just wondered if you know, just from industry information, are they hitting targets or are they exceeding? Do you see any of the
What I'm hearing,
projects?
reading Engineering News Record and a few other trade magazines, most everybody's bids are coming in 20% high
20 to 30.
and higher. There was one that came in, and I'm trying to remember the municipality, it was not in Texas, it came in 60% high.
Materials mostly. Materials,
Labor,
yeah.
fuel.
Everything, and some contractors are trying to come back after the fact and issue change orders for cost adjustments, even though they don't have the contractual right to do that, but then they're threatening to walk the job if they don't get it.
Mhm.
Concrete's doubled. Just simple concrete. I mean, if you're getting a pour, if you got bid $3,000 within the past 6 months, it's doubled.
Yeah.
Just concrete.
Well, and I keep hearing there's a little bit of a cement shortage right now.
Yeah, there is. Yes, there is.
So
That's not gravel. That's all the, and it's not the Roman cement. It's not the stuff that's gonna last 1,000 years.
One thing to note while you're looking and talking, water well on you here, you're going to see water well rehab.
I was gonna ask about that.
So every year we try to look at least 2 wells to rehab, right? That last somewhere between 10 and 15 years.
So this is kind of like your routine maintenance. You're just making sure that everything's good and it doesn't go down on you.
Normally, we'll
Yeah.
go in and we'll clean the casing and clean the jet.
You get any sort of mineralization, you're cleaning it up.
Yeah, cleaning all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the difference with these. And so if it's an even number, it's in the Evangeline aquifer. If it's an odd number, it's in the Jasper.
Evangeline is the shallow one.
Yes,
Okay, and the Jasper, you're in the upper Jasper is the one slightly deeper.
correct.
Okay.
And so when we're looking on here, well 32 is going to be a general rehab. We're going to go in there, we're going to clean it all, get it back up. It's supposed to produce 1,200 GPM. It's producing 300 GPM, gallons per minute. So we're going to go in there and we're going to clean it all and get it back up to as much as 1,200. We probably regained about 900 to 1,000 GPM. Wells 5 and 11, since Lone Star does not have any rules on groundwater, we expect other entities around us to be pumping. We will be looking at lowering wells 5 and 11, which takes it beyond just a normal rehab. We'll be going in there and basically putting more pumps on there, more piping, lowering down the well, or lowering down the pumps, and possibly putting a bigger motor on there because you have to pull the water up higher. So those 2 items were not in the last year's project plan, but they were put this year because since we're going to be going in there and rehabbing it, it's just a little bit more money to go ahead and lower it now versus 2 to 3 times as much in the future.
You don't have to drill deeper. It's already cased.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is go a little bit lower in the well.
Add another bowl or 2.
Yeah.
Possibly increase the motor size.
Right.
I think the plan is if we do increase the motor size, we would increase it to the maximum capacity of the wiring that's existing instead of having to rewire.
So you're talking about a wire mesh at the bottom around with a gravel pack.
No, I'm talking about the electrical wiring.
All the wiring for the motor,
Yes.
for the motor. And these are not submersibles. These are, what's the?
Vertical
turbine.
Vertical turbine. So this equipment's mostly on the surface, not submersed in the
Yeah.
formation.
You just have the bowls for the pump down that water. But high level, semi-detailed, but any questions? All right, well, if y'all think of some, we're here every month.
Thank you, Chris. Data on infrastructure funding, is that Ed?
Two quick things. We are continuing to work with the political consultant that's helping us gain access to federal and state legislators that are involved in the rulemaking process, in the process mainly to ensure that Woodlands Water Agency and the Woodlands Special Districts are not excluded from funding opportunities. So that's number one. Number two, Bear Branch Dam. Congressman Crenshaw has submitted Bear Branch Dam rehabilitation project as a project he is interested in. He's assigned an amount of 3.6 million to it. This would, I think I mentioned at the last HUD meeting, as we found out from a recent phone conversation with the Corps, this would be a federal local match. Draft agreement that I have with me shows a 75% federal match with 25% local. But it's a reimbursement, which is not something that we were expecting. And so we're going to be running some traps. Basically, it would mean we would have to front the money for the construction, make the application for reimbursement, and their agreement says the federal government will reimburse if funds are available. And so one of the things we've got to look at is how long is that, would this project have to be carried before we're actually reimbursed? So we're going to be having some internal meetings to talk about funding opportunity, what that looks like in the way of funding. And we will be coming back to y'all with some recommendations on that. And that's it for item number 10. I can go to number 11 if you'd like.
If you would, please.
We'll go to page 34 of your packet. There are 5 funding partners. SGRA is the managing agency on a project to look at detention on Spring Creek watershed. There were 2 reservoirs that were being considered reservoirs being dry detention basins out in Waller County. One was the Birch Creek Reservoir, one was the Walnut Creek. These are on what looked like property that was undeveloped because it's currently cow pasture and forest. As we got further into it, found that one set of property is owned by Rice University, and they have they've recently executed a long-term lease for $100 million for 1.1 million solar panels on that tract. And so we're trying to make contact with Rice University and their foundation to figure out if there are options. The other is a property owned by a land developer, and they are proposing, they've got 4 or 5 paper muds on that tract right now, and he's trying to amass enough property to put together a master plan community. We're trying to talk to him. This letter is from his attorney indicating that they're not interested, but we're still trying to visit with them. But basically the group that is working, our project management team, along with our consultant, we're trying to look at what options might be available. We're also looking at some options along Spring Creek itself, like desnagging, vegetation management, that sort of thing. These one other options may be available, but we should be back to the muds within 60, 90 days to kind of give you all an indication of what direction this project is headed.
Thank you, Ed. Questions? Okay, no further questions. Agenda item 12, consider an act on Woodlands wastewater strategic plan stakeholder representative. There's not a page for this. I'd like to nominate Betty Doherty for that assignment, and I'll discuss why, if I get a second for that nomination.
I second.
Thank you. Questions, comments? The reason for my nomination of Betty is that she was working in parallel. She was our first alternate. And so whenever Richard Stromat couldn't make a meeting, or after a meeting, they would have a follow-up and they would talk about what had gone on and so forth. So of all of us who are currently on this, I felt as though Betty was the best representative that we could have. And furthermore, there's only, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris or Ed, I think there's only 3 more meetings, right?
Correct.
July, November, and January of next year.
I think is that right? Okay,
I believe so, yes, sir.
okay. I thought they were closer together, but
Okay.
And on that topic, we are going to offer a workshop on July the 1st, I think, is what we're looking at, for anyone that would want to come and kind of get a summary, an update of that process, even though,
If that conversation, that what occurred.
yeah, it'll be
Orientation.
primarily set for new stakeholders, but all new directors and others are welcome to attend.
Is that at the
It
SRJA?
will be at their office where the new director workshop was,
Is it
yes.
9 to noon?
I don't know the time.
10 to 1 is what we have calendar.
It's 10 to 1? Okay, instead of 9 to noon?
And we'll get that out. If it's been confirmed, we need to get that out.
Oh,
sorry, trying to work out the time.
right.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any further additional nominations? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Congratulations, Betty.
You sure?
No, but you are. Okay, Brian Yates, receive attorney's report, please.
No general items to cover for y'all today, but I do need to go over item number 14, our resolution concerning developed district status. Happy to answer any general questions.
I have a question on that. My question was, under the implementation paragraph, where it says once completed, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I said, once adopted, can this be reversed? Or once you become
Every year it's reconsidered. So you can have a district that could be developed because it's a mature district, but then it may annex some property. So then you're under the 95% metric. So it can go back and forth. So what we did as a firm for our clients, we put into a place on an annual basis to make this determination, so you could be able to consider whatever factors may change from year to year. And the engineer certifies because they're the ones who are best suited to be able to make that determination on whether you've met that 95% metric or not. So they certify, and that's attached to your resolution, is their certification as to whether you are a developed or a developing district for this particular tax year.
So then if you're not considered developed, you could have up to 8% increase instead of 3.5%.
Which is what the historical rollback rate was. It was historically was 8% until SB2 was passed in the 2019 legislative session. And that created that multiple tier system. And I don't even talk about the low tax rate because, even in the Woodlands, we don't have anybody at 2.5 cents. We're pretty daggone low, but we're not that low. So we're either dealing with developed or developing. And historically it was 8%, but now post SB2, if you're a developed district, you have 3.5%. And also the other major change was you're subject to an automatic election if you're a developed district, if you exceed that 3.5%, where historically there was a petition process and folks had to petition to force the rollback election. So that was the other major change.
And this is just for our mud. It's not
Just
for the
for your-
collective.
Each bud has its own
Okay.
resolution.
So if we had to have a vote, It would be just MUD 60.
Correct. All you're doing is adopting a resolution declaring that you're a developing district for 2022 based on the certification from your. And this is, this is well before, we're not talking about what your actual tax rate is going to be, what y'all want to do for your tax rate. That won't be until after we get certified, which would probably be August. So,
July.
yeah, July. So we start the discussion in August. Usually adopt our tax rate in September.
It just tells me how to calculate it for any thing.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
It just tells me how to calculate it, whether you're at 8% or 3.5% on a developed or developing.
All right. Happy to
Assume
answer any
this-
questions y'all have on item number 14.
This is just consider. We don't require any action today.
Consider adoption. So we will adopt the resolution.
Okay, so we should have a motion.
To
Yes.
adopt the resolution, yes, sir.
Motion to consider adoption of resolution concerning development district status for 2022, and that recommended status is developing, which would then allow us an allowable increase of 8% for operation and maintenance charges.
So moved.
So moved by Director Doherty, second.
I second.
Second by Director McAleer. Further discussion? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Abstain. Good. Thank you. Motion passes. Very good. Receive the general manager's report. Jim?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to highlight some items from the trustee meeting. We did report that the Chamber of Commerce water forum that we've been working with them on for several months now has been firmly set, I think, for July the 20th at 10 a.m. I've been informed that it may be a virtual option, so we'll let you know more about on that in the next week or so. Just a reminder, the invited participants are Woodlands Water, Lone Star Groundwater District, Park, the Subsidence District, San Jacinto River Authority, and I think I got everybody covered. So more to come on that. And just kind of a recap, we did have the new director workshop on June the 3rd. I think there was only one new director that did not attend. So thank y'all for taking the time and attending that. We also reported at the trustee meeting, our AMI meter installation is about 98% complete. I think the delay is delivery of meters to finish that with the issues that are going on globally and nationwide, just struggling to get that inventory in. I also reported on our issues with system damage with TACUS and their contractors. Just to better explain, we're actually dealing with, I think, 5 or more subcontractors with TACUS. They are the ones in the field putting in the high fiber and doing the damage. Right now, we've collected $68,000 in damage reimbursements. We have a check that we think we'll get this week for $30,000, and we've got about $268,000 that is still in negotiations and trying to get payment in. It has been a real struggle. If you haven't heard, they have almost unobstructed authority to get into the public right away and do what they're doing. We have really struggled to change some of their construction techniques and the coordination with them to minimize the damage. But it's really it's unfair the way the code is set up for those communication contractors to come in my opinion, and work in the right of way. It puts the burden on us to recover our damages and negotiate with them. Also, Dr. Sekula Gibbs attended the trustee meeting. You'll see in the summary, she is recommending the trustees live stream their meeting. She also talked about ongoing odor issues that she is seeing at secluded trail and the subdivision that she lives in. We're working with her to develop a status report for that. We had actually reached out to see if she wanted to meet in person to go through that, but she has declined the in-person meeting, so we'll do a written report for her and others. And last but not least, we have 4 recent compliment emails in your packet, so please take note of those. And that concludes my report.
The code that you're dealing with, where could that be fixed going forward? In the state legislature? Or?
Yes, we had that discussion earlier this morning. I think at some point it behooves us to reach out to our legislators and bring attention to this the way it's written, because
Is it state or house?
state,
Okay, so it's
State.
Brandon Crichton
yes,
level?
that's right.
It'd be, it'd have to pass both the House and the Senate. It'd actually be a.
So we're talking like Steve Toth and Brandon Crichton. So you've had those discussions with them?
We
yet?
have not, but it was suggested this morning that maybe we should.
I think
and
we
agree.
should, and we could all be there if you want.
So that's coming, yes.
Thank you. That takes care of items 15 and 16. Do we need to recess, Brian?
Sure, not
We do
today.
not. Good. So we're down to agenda item 19. Discuss any matters for placement on future agendas. I had, maybe this has been addressed, Jim, under items 27, discuss page 5. Staff update on distribution lines, and SJRA will update on transmission lines. Do we have anything from the WWA as far as distribution
We
lines?
don't have a written report today. We are, have a ongoing study with a consultant for AC water lines and PVC water lines that are owned by the MUDs. That's going to be, that report should be available in the next 2 weeks. So maybe by next month, we can give you a report on that.
We should put that as an agenda item then, please. Thank you. Any further matters to be placed on future agendas?
We'll have the item to consider approval of the, or give direction to the trustee on approval of the room authority budget. That's July, because the vote of
July.
the trustee will be in.
Okay. Authority. Budget approval, no, budget direction.
Fair range budget presentation.
Yes, that will be next month as well. Fair Branch Reservoir System budget.
Okay, so we've got 3 things to add, right?
And you won't be acting on it. We will be presenting it for your review.
Anything else? Very good. I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you.
And then, if you didn't know,